Imagine sending your child to school in the morning, backpack on, smiling at the door, and never seeing them come home again. That is the reality for dozens of families in Iran's Hormozgan province right now. A girls' primary school, the Shajareh Tayebeh school, was struck during the ongoing U.S.-Israeli military operation against Iran. Over 160 people were killed. Most of them were young students. And now, one of the world's most powerful nations, China, has stepped forward with $200,000 in emergency aid specifically for those grieving parents. But here is the question the whole world is asking. Is this just humanitarian compassion? Or is this the opening move in something much bigger? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what China's move means, why it matters for global politics, and what could happen next in one of the most serious conflicts the world has seen in years. Let us start from the beginning, Bedekar, because context is everything here. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched coordinated military strikes against Iran. The stated objectives included targeting Iran's nuclear program, its ballistic missile infrastructure, and its military leadership. The strikes were significant. Within hours, Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei was killed. Iranian officials, military sites, and unfortunately, civilian areas were hit. Iran responded almost immediately. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps launched waves of missiles and drones targeting Israeli cities, U.S. military bases across the Middle East, and military infrastructure in neighboring countries, including Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Iraq, and others. The conflict, now entering its third week, has resulted in thousands of casualties. According to Iran's representative to the United Nations, at least 1,348 Iranian civilians have been killed. Over 6,000 civilian locations have reportedly been targeted. Now, among the most painful events of this entire conflict was a U.S. Tomahawk missile strike that hit the Shajareh Tayebeh girls' primary school in southern Iran's Hormozgan province. A military investigation has preliminarily determined this may have been the result of a targeting error. But for the families of those children, that explanation changes nothing. More than 160 people lost their lives. Most of them were little girls who had gone to school that morning expecting a normal day. This is the tragedy that triggered China's response. On Friday, March 13, 2026, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Guo Jiakun stood before journalists at a regular Beijing press briefing and made a carefully worded but powerful statement. He expressed China's deep condolences over the deaths of the students at the Shajareh Tayebeh school and extended sympathies to the families. He then confirmed that the Red Cross Society of China would provide the Iranian Red Crescent Society with $200,000 in emergency humanitarian assistance, specifically directed toward offering support to the parents of the students who were killed. He added, and this part is important, that China condemns all indiscriminate attacks on civilians and non-military targets. He also stated that China stands ready to continue providing Iran with necessary assistance and to support the Iranian people in overcoming the current difficulties. Now, some people watching this might say $200,000 is not that much money for a country like China, and technically that is correct. But this is not really about the dollar amount. This is about the message. This is about Beijing publicly, formally, and deliberately stepping onto the stage of this conflict, not with weapons, not with troops, but with a humanitarian gesture that carries enormous diplomatic weight. China is saying, we see what happened, we name it as wrong, and we are standing beside Iran. To understand why this matters so much, we need to zoom out and look at where China has been standing throughout this conflict. Since the strikes began on February 28th, Beijing's official position has been consistent and clear. China has called for an immediate halt to military operations. It has condemned the strikes as violations of Iran's sovereignty and the United Nations Charter. It has refused to support or endorse the U.S.-Israeli campaign. At a press briefing on March 2nd, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning described the assassination of Iran's supreme leader as a grave violation of Iran's sovereignty and security, strong words that place China firmly on the opposite side of the argument from Washington. But there is more. CNN reported, citing 3 U.S. intelligence sources, that China was considering going further. Not just humanitarian aid, but potentially financial assistance, spare parts, and even missile-related components to Iran. U.S. officials were monitoring signals that China's position might be shifting from passive opposition to active support. China, it should be noted, is the largest buyer of Iranian crude oil. Its energy security is directly linked to what happens in this region. The threat of the Strait of Hormuz being closed, which Iran has raised, would be catastrophic for Chinese oil imports. So Beijing is watching this conflict very closely. Every statement, every gesture, every dollar of aid is calculated, and Russia is in the picture too. Reports indicate that Russia has been sharing satellite imagery and intelligence with Iran, including data on U.S. troop positions and movements. The coordination between Moscow and Beijing around this conflict is a significant geopolitical development that analysts are watching with deep concern in Western capitals. But let us step back for a moment from the politics, because it is easy to lose sight of the human tragedy at the center of this story. We are talking about children, young girls who went to school and did not come home. Their parents are now part of one of the most heartbreaking circles of grief imaginable, caught in the middle of a geopolitical conflict they had no part in starting. China's $200,000 in aid is going directly to those parents. It will not rebuild what was lost. Nothing can. But it is an acknowledgement from the international stage that what happened to those families was wrong, that their children's lives mattered, that the world is watching. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Guo Jiakun's words, "We extend our sincere sympathies to their families," may seem like diplomatic language, but behind that language are real people who lost real children. This is why humanitarian gestures, even in the middle of military and geopolitical conflicts, carry weight. They remind all parties that behind the military targets, behind the strike coordinates and strategic objectives, there are human beings. So where does this go from here? The conflict as of today, March 13th, 2026, is still active. Iran has set 3 conditions for peace negotiations, though details remain fluid. U.S. and Israeli operations continue. Iranian retaliatory strikes have slowed significantly, down by nearly 90% according to U.S. Central Command, possibly due to depletion of missile stockpiles. Inside Iran, Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the assassinated supreme leader, was elected on March 8th as the new supreme leader. The IRGC and Iran's top political figures have pledged allegiance to him. Whether this transition stabilizes or further complicates Iran's position in the conflict remains to be seen. On the international front, China's humanitarian aid announcement is likely just the beginning of a more active Chinese role. Whether Beijing moves from condemnation and aid to more direct forms of support will be one of the defining geopolitical questions of the coming weeks. Europe is largely on the sidelines. The UK has condemned Iranian counterstrikes while allowing US use of British military bases. France and Germany have called for diplomacy. Gulf states, caught between economic ties with the West and geographic proximity to Iran's missiles, are navigating an incredibly difficult position. And the United States is approaching a potential decision point. Has the stated military objective of degrading Iran's nuclear and military capabilities been achieved, or does the operation continue? Analysts at organizations like the Atlantic Council have noted that Trump may seek an off-ramp sooner rather than later, particularly as oil prices spike and global markets show volatility. Here is what we know for certain today. A school was struck. Over 160 people, most of them children, lost their lives. China has responded with $200,000 in direct aid to the families of those students, describing it as a humanitarian gesture rooted in compassion and solidarity. But this story is bigger than one aid announcement. It is a window into how global powers are positioning themselves in one of the most serious military conflicts in recent history. It is a story about children and grief and the human cost of geopolitical decisions made thousands of miles away from a small school in Hormozgan province. And it is a reminder that in moments of great tragedy, how nations choose to respond, what they say, what they do, who they stand beside, tells us everything about their values and their vision for the world. We will continue following this story as it develops. If you found this video informative, please share it with someone who needs to understand what is happening in the world right now. And stay tuned, because this conflict is far from over.